Hello, all, and welcome to the FireLink Podcast, our second episode. My name is Larry, and here I have with me my boy, Sam. We're here to talk about all things that we enjoy and hope you do as well. Today's topic is Dark Souls. If you've played this game, you might have heard of it. We're going to explore our own personal experience with the series and take a trip through modern and classic gaming to discover why Dark Souls is one of the best examples of how to make a modern video game and become an instant classic and still yet, through remaster, stand the test of time.
All right, let's get into it. So Dark Souls 1. Let's take ourselves back a little bit to 2011.
So when was the first time, Sam, that you saw this game, that you heard of this game, and like the first time that you've ever laid eyes on the words Dark Souls, like the first time you've ever experienced the very essence of the game?
All right, so it had to have been. See, this is interesting because a game like Dark Souls, you think I would have been aware of it before it came out, like the promotional material, any trailers, any articles about it. I really don't remember seeing too much about it. I think I had a vague understanding that this game was coming out because I had played Demon Souls and I was aware of it. But because
yes, I didn't even play Demon Souls.
Yes, see, because back then Demon Souls was like this, like this niche, unknown, unheard of thing for the most part. Like, not a lot of people played it. Of course, the sales, I don't think, were that great.
Yeah, I mean, the people who did play it love it.
Yeah, I remember loving it and thinking, all the things you would think about Dark Souls, where, like it's this very hard dark fantasy game. It's very obtuse, but it has like, a lot of great gameplay elements, obviously sick bosses, a great aesthetic. Like it's kind of this nice thing that you'd want to play. But I honestly, like, I liked it, but I didn't think like it was probably because the overall reception of it. I probably just it didn't stick with me like, oh, what are they making next? Like, are they making a sequel?
Yeah, it was so obscure.
Yeah, I just kind of played it. It was on my PS3, and then I didn't forget about it, but it was just kind of there. Like, yeah, I played that.
You weren't like expecting more.
Right, and I don't remember telling my friends like, hey, you should check this out. I might have, probably because of the difficulty. I was just like, I know most people aren't into that old school level of difficulty.
Yeah, no, a lot of people, listen, I mean, I know someone who, they brought Dark Souls home. This is back when, like, the game first came out. They brought Dark Souls home, and they were so frustrated with it that they did return it. And I believe the game he got when he returned it was Lord of the Rings, North of the something? North of...
I'm familiar with the title, but I've never played it.
Yeah, I haven't played it either, and I mean, I heard good things. I don't know if it was bad, but whatever. The point is that there is like a group of people who would wouldn't enjoy these games. Like it's too much. Like it would just seem like a pain in the ass. But for the community that it's found, it has like people like worship it like for real. And I remember the first time I ever heard of the game, I was over my friend Nick's house, like this dude he's like a brother to me. I've known him since I'm 6 years old. And it's funny, the reason we met each other little was because we both used to talk about Ratchet and Clank and Tak and the Power of Juju, some old like PS2 shit right there. So since then we had a bond through gaming. But when I came over his house one day and he was just talking about this game. He was like, oh, fucking Dark Souls. Yeah, like, the point of it is to be hard. And I'm like, well, that sounds awful. Like, why would I want to play a game that's, I'm not supposed to have fun? But, like, I remember watching him play it and it just, oh, man, I thought it looked fucking awesome. So, I was looking up all the reviews online and checking it out when it came out. And this had to be within the year that it came out, because I think I was in 9th or 10th grade No, I had to be in ninth grade because like a year or two later, Dark Souls 2 came out. But I do remember it not being a full price game when I bought it. And I remember like dying to get it. I wanted to get it so bad. It was the first time I ever sold video games and to fucking GameStop. I made like the critical mistake. I think they gave me like 10 cents for one fucking game.
Sounds right.
But I wound up putting that money because I didn't have I think I worked at McDonald's, but I wasn't making that much money. But I sold those games and I got it and I brought it home and I was just like on it from there. Like it was just that was when the adventure started. And I would have my boy Nick come over and he would show me how to get through like Blighttown and shit, and we would try to summon each other with the awful, the summoning system then was awful. So I'd be like, please, like I want you to help me with the boss, and we'd try and we did get it to work once or twice, and the memories that I have with it first playing it are totally different than how you feel about it tackling it later, being like an expert at it. Like that's the thing about every Souls game is that you'll never get like the feel of the first time running through it. Like you always just get that once, like I think that's the pretty sick charm that you get from it. So I didn't mean to cut you off, Sam, but you were speaking about Demon Souls. When you got Dark Souls, when did that decision come around to you? Like when did you find yourself like, oh, I should pick this game up?
Okay, so I decided to get it once I saw the reviews for it and they were popping up everywhere. And I remember distinctly watching the reviews over and over, and it just captivated me. Everything they were saying about it, they just made it sound like a larger than life experience. Like it made it, before it even had a legacy of that we know it as today. They kind of spoke about it in a way that made it seem like it already was, and it hadn't even released yet, I don't think, when reviews popped, because reviews come out a bit early. And I was like, okay, so I heard one of the things that stuck out to me was they would talk about it and mention that it was like a dark Zelda, or like a modern retelling of Zelda, but just much darker, grittier game. Obviously it wasn't made by Nintendo, but it was still a Japanese developer, so from Software. So being a huge Zelda fan and seeing these reviews in motion, and just I was like, I have to play this game. Like everything about this seems appealing.
And I remember when I got the game, I do remember describing it to people. I was like, dude, it's like a hardcore Zelda, like fucking like a balls to the wall Zelda,
Yeah. And of course, it's not a direct comparison. Like the combat is weighted, and it's much more RPG heavy, and it's a different game overall. But it is the whole point of exploration. That much is the same, and obviously the medieval dark fantasy setting is comparable. Plus there's magic. It's fantasy.
There's magic if you want to play that way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were inspired by Zelda, like they've mentioned.
Any game where there's like, personally for me, if there's like, oh, you can shoot crystals, I'm like, I never care. I'm like, give me a sword. Like I want a sword. I want to hit shit. I want to get up in grills, man.
To mention about the magic, the only thing I remember being like captivated by was the thunderbolt, like being able to throw, like the one you get later in the game, because the Titanite demons throw them at you. So I was like, well, kind of. I was just like, I want that. Like, I'm pretty sure it's because I just wanted to be like Zeus. But for the most part, I always play like the battle mage, or like mostly I'm hitting shit with swords or whatever, but I'll also throw a little lightning bolt or fire at you or something like that. But it's definitely like more emphasis on
I have like
melee.
Absolutely no like ranged anything. Fighting the
you're
moonlight
just
butterflies,
pure melee.
Fucking that's like the serious waiting game for me.
Yeah, wait for him to land rather than just
usually
like throw shit at him.
I get him in like 2 hits anyway.
Yeah.
So like cause I always forget about him, and then later when I'm like, oh, I want some souls, and then like it doesn't even give you that many anyway. So
yeah, he's like an early encounter. Depending on how you play through the game, he should be an early encounter.
Yeah,
and
no,
he's not
definitely.
that hard.
But he is a little hidden. Like I can see like why people wouldn't find him directly.
You can go so many paths in the game. But anyways, my first experience was I played through it, and I don't think I played through it online at all. And that was the thing with me for Dark Souls as a whole. Like I didn't really play co-op or anything until much later. Yeah, it's a different experience because my brother is a much bigger Dark Souls expert than I am, and he's sunk thousands and thousands and thousands of hours into the series. So he, at that, when I was playing through it initially, I would like talk to him about the game, kind of like, how now if you wanted to know about the game, you have all these videos online and Wikipedia,
Yeah, people have cracked the code.
Yeah, so back then it was kind of cool to like talk to somebody about it and have someone as interested in learning all the secrets and just trying different things and seeing where it led.
That's interesting because it's not only is it one of the few games, but it's still one of the few games even now in the modern era that it's like you talk about it through word of mouth for some like odd reason, like you want to talk to people about it, you want to be like, oh, there's a wall over here that you can hit, or there's something you could do over here, and it's like, oh shit, like I didn't know that, because it's like, how would you even look that up? Like now you definitely probably have guides to like where all secrets and things are, but I was reading up, I think it was like a year ago that I had read that people didn't even find most of the secrets in the game until like correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like 2014, 2015. Like it was like a more recent time that it took people to really find every single thing in Dark Souls 1, and how else would you know, really, like, through word of mouth, that, like, oh, there's, like, a treasure here, and then, especially, I know you didn't summon, but if you were someone who liked to get summoned a lot, you would, like, show other people in the game, like, you would run and hit the wall for them or something, and that was a cool aspect of cooperation that, would the servers have been better back then, for Dark Souls 1, it really would have meant something even more than it did at the time. But throughout the time that the series has fleshed out their online, and by Dark Souls 3, it's pretty much flawless. And in the remastered of Dark Souls, I enjoy doing that personally, showing people where secrets are and other things like that, because every time, even when I play the game today, I always find something that I'm like, oh damn, I didn't know that was there before, I know you've had that same experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. Early on, like I was saying, my brother was the one to show me like all the secrets. He was the guy that, instead of having an online player run around and show me where all the secrets were, or just reading messages and seeing, like, all the hints or the misdirection that people leave for you where they're trying to be unhelpful rather than, like to point you off a cliff or something.
Try jumping.
Which is just really funny because most of the time it's obvious, but it makes you wonder, because being someone who's played many games, especially way before Dark Souls, it makes me think of things where like, Castlevania 64 comes to mind, where there are invisible walkways that you have like no way of knowing that there's a secret going on them, but until you try it out or read about it in like a strategy guide back then, or something like that. But it made me think of that, like they're trying to send you to your death, but you're like, maybe it's possible. And then later in the game there are paths that are invisible that you walk on, and it's like, holy shit, there that is a thing. So then it makes you wonder, or question at least, should you try some of the areas? It always gets
you to at some point let your guard down.
Yeah.
And then that's where they get you.
Yeah, and I think, it's an intentional comical aspect of the game.
Like a dark humor, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely about that. And that's, you know, that's really awesome that the game that's about being like, you know, you're so isolated and you know, in dark environments, you know, very grim, depressing environments. You know, it's also about community and like being together and like coming as one to like enjoy an experience, not always be helpful, you know, because not everyone always is helpful. And I think in-game patches emphasizes that, you know,
Yeah,
that philosophy.
even the NPCs will kick you in the nuts.
He's like a human player, you know, like,
yeah, he's like a human player that they programmed.
Yeah, so, you know, back then, the community wasn't as strong. Everything, you know, was word of mouth. But like you said in 2014 or whatever, but I think just more recent years, rather, people are really latching on to the idea of immediately, you know, dissecting games much quicker. We have much easier ways to communicate. It's kind of a normal thing to immediately go online on different websites or applications like Discord or, you know, like Reddit or whatever your, you know, your preferences, and start like searching for these secrets and discovering and sharing and like immediately mapping out games. And you have people data mining the games and finding everything within the game's code, you know, at the same time. It's just like more manpower, you know, it's like you're dissecting this thing quicker, and therefore we know more about it faster. And it's like some games from the past still have Easter eggs, you know, some old arcade game or something, you know, you'll see an article now and then. It'd be like, wow, there's this Easter egg that nobody figured out until now. It's probably because maybe somebody had figured it out, but they couldn't find a way to share it.
Right, yeah.
Or like maybe just not enough people were focusing on it at the time. Whereas now, any game that comes out now that's at least a little popular or like a cult classic or something,
they like want to break it immediately.
Yeah, they want to do everything with it. And with speedrunning communities getting involved, that brings more attention, because then you'll get people that obviously want to speedrun it and learn it, but you also get people be like, I want to try this game, period, for the first time. Like, or just, you know, maybe not speedrun it, but just I want to do what they're doing kind of deal. You know,
right.
I mean, now, you know, we kind of got definitely our first experiences, you know, out there. How do you feel about the first Dark Souls, if you had to encapsulate that into words?
Oh man, how I feel on the inside, basically. Every day you just wake up and you get torn down, but your bed is like a bonfire. And every night you go to bed and you wake up and all your enemies are still living. They never go away.
Because they went to bed too.
Because they also went to bed. They also went to bed and they had a good night's rest. And they're back to fuck up your day again. They're coming back. They're not going nowhere. But the game is great. I love the game. How I feel about Dark Souls, it's one of those games that I think the only other couple games that I feel like this way about it is maybe almost like a Super Smash Brothers or a Super Mario 64, where I feel like I could pick this game up any day and know what to do. Like I've played the shit out of it. I've gone super hard with it. I think you have two feelings about it, and it's like your first feeling is like when you first started the game versus like a couple years later, where it's like, you know, the system, you know your weapons, you know how your weapons upgrade, you know how your armor upgrades, you know, I still find some new things every now and then. Like, I think it wasn't until, like, I've played this on Xbox 360, I played this on PS4, and now I've recently played it completely portable on Switch, and it wasn't even till the Switch version that I ran into a Vagrant and was like, what on God's earth is that thing? And I had to like look it up. Like, I'm like, and it's like, it's just a by chance thing. Like, that was like, I still haven't seen another one. Like, I saw one and I'm just like, I didn't even know this was in the game. Like, it's not something I ever would have thought of. And then it's like, how do you figure out what this thing even does? Like, you have to look it up. Like, you have to go out and figure it out. And I think that's something that's really cool about the game. I think that's something that's really awesome about the game. especially one of the things that people praise mostly about the game, especially the hardcore fans, is the way that the story is in the game, but it's not. Like, you have to find it, you know? If you want to know the story, you gotta read item. It's weird, like, a simple item will give you a story description. Like, it'll have something behind it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, some history.
Yeah, some history behind it. Like, some of the items, and then you get items that are just, like, totally useless, but they have, like, a little snippet of info. Like, it's so strange. It emulates, like, a real life thing. It's like, this is a coin, and it's like, okay, like, I can't do anything with it, but I have it, you know? And, you know, I think the best way that I can describe Dark Souls, if I really wanted to put, like, one word on it, I think I would just put clever. Like, it's just such a clever game. Like, it's like, it's one thing to have that feeling of, wow, like, I can't believe you could do that in this game. But then you have to have an even better mind to be the person to make that in the game. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like, that just shows me that the minds behind the level design, the character design, the enemy design, the NPC design was just like, they cut no corners. Everything has something big behind it. Like, you know, like, I know we've talked about it before. You've actually brought it up to me. Every single area you go to, you fight different enemies with different move sets, with different weapons. Like, everything changes as you go along. I know you've definitely said that to me at some point, and I was like, you know, you're right. Like, if you want to find this enemy, you go here. You want to go get this item, you have to go and maybe fight this enemy that has it. You know, you're doing a lot of traveling in this game. And I think the next clever thing about the game is the map. The map is so well laid out that they still, I bet we can both agree that they still have yet to recapture that feeling, whether Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2, or Dark Souls 3. It hasn't 100% happened again, where it really does feel like you start at FireLink Shrine and you go on, like, a serious journey, and you only cross paths with FireLink Shrine like a couple more times before you can teleport there whenever you want. But, like, when you feel like you leave that bonfire, you're kind of like, I don't really want to go that far. Like, I remember when I first got the game, I was, like, nervous to travel too far. It made me feel like I could legitimately get lost and not find my way back. You know what I mean? Whereas you know, when it came to Dark Souls 2, when you started, like, Majula, you would go out in one direction and you would always get warped back. Like, you knew for a fact that when you went one way, you had a way back. And then in Bloodborne, you knew you were going the right way because there were no wrong ways. Things really didn't intertwine as much. And then Dark Souls 3, you were teleporting from the beginning. So it was like, you could never get lost. You know, that didn't diminish the game for me, but I'm just saying the first one is the only one where you get that feeling. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and when you first begin the game, you don't know. You know, if you go towards the graveyard or something and continue there, you'll probably die immediately, or at least be chased away by enemies that you should recognize if, you know, you've played games that are simply more powerful than you, so you should not go there yet. But obviously, the brilliance of the game, or you discover, maybe it's not so obvious at first, is that you could, with enough experience and skill or sheer luck, break through those areas and continue and live. And you make it to the bonfire.
No, it's not closed off to you. No one tells you where to go.
It's total freedom.
It's not that they don't tell you where to go. Like, they'll tell you, like, okay, ring the bells of awakening.
And, but, like, there's a suggested path.
They're like, yeah, it's in a church, or it's below.
Yeah,
and it's like,
above
wow,
and below.
That really helped. You know, like, up and down, that's the directions that you get.
Yeah, the specific, you know, if you think about, go up and go down, the specifics are so much more minute. It's an outline, you know, of your journey, and you know how you have to progress. You have to go there eventually, but you could go wherever you want at first, and eventually you'll make your way to those places regardless. And then, you know, you will continue and progress onto the, you know, the next part of the game.
Yeah, you really don't hit roadblocks because you always just wind up somewhere else.
Yeah, and there's plenty to see and collect. and each enemy has their own like drops, so you could, spend a lot of time in different sections of the world exploring and discovering and like taking it all in. And, you mentioned it about each area being distinct. And I think that's really important. And it shows the game isn't, let me put it this way, like you were saying, it's well thought out. It's something that's supposed to be forward thinking. You can tell that it's like walking through a well-constructed haunted house or a theme park ride where they designed it for you to go through and experience almost exactly what they wanted you to experience. Every trap, every sneak attack, every secret, all these things are there.
Which isn't to say that you won't catch on to it, but you're gonna most likely fall for, like, who is not gonna not fall for a mimic unless somebody told you how to look for them?
Yeah, exactly. And then, you learn all the little tricks about them later on in life. But
right.
Initially, everything is a blank slate, unless you looked up or saw somebody or watched a video or something beforehand, had prior knowledge.
Yeah, and then it's like, they're not cheap traps too, because there is a difference between a mimic chest and a regular chest. You can see them breathing. Usually they have like a chain attached to them.
Yeah, there's a visual difference. Nothing's ever cheap in that way.
If you just kick them, they get up,
So yeah, the thing about the world being like this interconnected thing, but it's also very heavily themed. Like every section has its own theme. Every boss, the major bosses of the game have their own distinct visual styles, and their locations kind of invoke that same style. And then the enemies are for the most part all unique to those areas, and it's just brilliant. Like I noticed it most when you're walking through an area and you see a previous area that you just had an experience with like earlier in the game, and you're just like, holy crap, like there it is. Like you could go there. I could go there right now.
If you see it, you can walk to it.
That was a big thing with this game that got me to say things, and I still say it to this day as, like a joke. But it's true. If you can go somewhere in a game, like Breath of the Wild does this, Skyrim. I think the first game I really had this experience with was Cameo Elements of Power, a launch title made by Rare.
For the 360.
Yeah. And I remember seeing things in the game in the distance and saying that same thing. I was like, you can go there. But with Dark Souls, obviously you could go there. But it's something, that game to me is just a little better made. It's something that you appreciate. And any game that has that, I feel like I appreciate that you took the time to have the continuity between the world where you're not separated by loading screens unless you die or something, or you're teleporting. But it doesn't take you out of the experience as much. And, that's something that I really look for. That's
definitely a theme of the game. I mean, they rarely let you come out of the experience. I mean, you can't pause the game. Like you said, there's no loading screens. Your only safe zone, for sure, is being at a bonfire, not while human, because if you are human, don't you dare go make a bag of popcorn while you're still human at a bonfire, because you will come back dead.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there's few moments of rest in the game where you're like, okay, I'm good right now.
I've experienced playing with you where you would be playing and we would be talking, and then, you would walk away, and then I could hear your character dying, over the chat. And I'm just like, I know what's happening. So I'm like,
get back to your
man.
Hurry!
Yeah. It's, it's part of the game, but that's sometimes one of the crappier really parts of the experience, the invading characters. I'm not too keen on people coming in your game and kind of impeding your progress, especially if you're trying to play with a friend nowadays. Back then it wasn't, you were telling me this, back then you couldn't really join with friends. Was that the deal?
Yeah, it was different then, because there was no way of playing with who you wanted to play as. So the whole idea of summoning was that it was random. It was like this stranger that came to help you, or this stranger that came to kill you. But, now it has a different it has sort of a different vibe to it, where it's almost like you're inviting someone to your match, which I know isn't technically what they wanted, but like the people wanted it so bad that they kind of implemented it, because the whole idea of putting a passcode in to invite a friend kind of breaks the lore in a bit. It kind of goes against the lore, but that's why I guess they don't really talk about it. It's just there. Like they don't
Yeah,
mention like, and this is how you play with a friend, because that's not how they want to look at it.
it's an acceptable exception, and it's definitely something in modern gaming that is desired. Like, you want to
Right.
play with your friends in that game. At least I know I definitely do, and most people probably do as well. It's just that freedom, to say, hey, I want to play this wonderful game I know so much about, but I definitely want to play with my buddies and show them and go through that experience together, which, we eventually did.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Which, this is, I'll get into a bit about talking about my experience offline versus playing with you, which is, I only experienced playing this game fully online co-op with the remastered version on Switch with you. And I'll talk about the offline first. I've played it, a bunch since my initial first playthrough, of course, and it was always offline. I think, let me put it this way: I didn't like summon anybody. I might have been online enough to see the messages, but I wasn't, summoning people or any of that. And so everything's up to you, as far as, you have to figure everything out on your own. You have to explore everywhere. You don't have anyone showing you the stuff except, I was saying my brother would show me, little secrets here and there. Like, I'm pretty sure he showed me the way to get to Ash Lake. I was really happy that was a thing, because it reminded me so much of Zelda, like having secrets that were within secrets, I think is a great idea. There's something even more exciting about that. And especially since it led to someplace interesting. It might have not been important or mandatory, but it was very interesting.
You get a cool dragon weapon, you get to enter a covenant, and then you get to do some Gravelord servant shit. You get something out of it. It's not just there to look cool. And that is a great area to get dragon scales as well, if you're looking to start stocking up for any dragon weapons. Like when I got that obsidian sword from Calamite, immediately if you look up where to get dragon scale, it's like this place is pretty much littered with it, and it's not an area that's, it's not the easiest area to get to, and it's definitely it's hidden pretty well, but should you find it, it's pretty rewarding. And even though like you find something and you get rewarded, it's like, to get all the dragon scale, it's like, well, you gotta fight this huge hydra. Like, it's like they give stuff to you, but always with a bit of a catch at least. But like, that's how it should be. Like, like, that's fun. I like fighting the hydra. It's cool.
Yeah. So it's like the secret within a secret, and then there's multiple benefits to that area. I'm pretty sure you get a pretty awesome ring there, so, in the tree. So it's not only the hydra. Yeah, but not only the hydra, but even the water there is treacherous. Like, if you're walking on those paths and they're very thin at a certain point, you think you have this freedom to, like, I'll just deviate, kind of go wherever I want. But if you did that, you would notice, and you do notice, that one way or the other, you'll find out that there's a drop off, and you could definitely just fall in the water and die. So there's the catch of this, seemingly unthreatening area, and then there's all these big threats and then little threats, and then even the environment, such as the path being windy and narrow.
Right, which is like, that's more of what creates your difficulty, rather, if you even want to call it that, which is like, that creates, well, what I'm trying to say is that's what creates your atmospheres of difficulty, as opposed to other game where it's just like an enemy has a lot of health, or an enemy attacks you relentlessly, or like they just make it like hard to the point where it's like, it's just hard because it's hard, you know what I mean? Like, you made it hard. But it's like with Dark Souls, it's like they didn't really make it hard, they made it challenging. Like there's nothing where it's like, oh, there's no way I can beat this. You know, the enemy's just hard. Like there's nowhere for me to get upgrades around here. Like there's nowhere for me to, it's all built for you to overcome some sort of obstacle. You know what I mean? Like if you want to fight like the ceaseless discharge, like there's not one way to do that. Like, you know, I mean, not if you want to, you kind of have to, but you can wait for him to strike down at you, or you can fight him at a range, but it's like, there's no set way where it's like, oh, if you don't get this weapon beforehand, like, dude, you're screwed, or this is the best weapon to do this with. Like, there's always a way to figure it out, and the difficulty really depends on how you play. You know, like Moonlight Butterfly, like we were talking about before, if you're a ranged character, you're constantly firing on him. But if you're trying to go for a more strength type deal, you know, it's easier. Or if you want to fight Sif, you know, he jumps around a lot until you really kick him down. But there's certain bosses, even if you want to look at Gwyn or whatever, where they pretty much charge you head on, or the Capra Demon, where you really don't get the chance to range them. You know, you kind of have to have a good defense because they're going to come at you quick, and they're going to come at you pretty hard. So you want to be ready for that. You know, you don't get too many opportunities to, especially in the first area where you fight the Capra Demon. That's such a small squeeze space. To get the distance between you and him is they make it quite rare. Like it's supposed to be like that, where he's up in your face. So to have a good shield and a good sword, good armor, like you have a better chance in a fight like that than someone who relies completely on magic. But that's not to say that someone who relies completely on magic wouldn't be able to do it. It's just a more difficult part of the game for them, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. A boss like the Capra Demon is meant to leave an impression on the unassuming, unaware beginner, or when you're early in the game. And it's supposed to be something that seems so unfair and insurmountable that when you come to defeat him, you have a sense of accomplishment. And the game overall, you know, no matter which section of the game you're talking about, it rewards your observation and your preparation. And if, you know, if you're really struggling, there's always a way to level up.
You could always just go a different way. Like, I mean, you're talking about some people don't even fight the Capra Demon. I mean,
it's optional.
I always do because I like to get the Ember and the depths. So, all right, so maybe most people do. But you don't necessarily have to go through the depths. You might just be... I generally do it later on. I don't do it right away.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, some people do. I usually ring like the first 2 bells first, and then I get like a weapon I really like, and then that's when I go down there, I friggin' rip through it, and then I get the Ember to ascend it. But a lot of the weapons I've used recently have used Twinkling Titanite, so I don't rely too much on on the Ember. Unless I'm mistaken, you might need the Ember for both. I'm not completely remembering right now, but I do know that that's the only reason I even go there. Just kill that butcher, get the Ember, go to Andre, get what I need. And then I don't even go through the depths at all. I think the depths is more annoying to go through than Blighttown is. I can get through Blighttown in like a second. But the depths, I can't stand being there. I hate fighting the rats and shit. I think the only time I ever fought the gaping demon dragon was with you. Demon dragon, whatever. Yeah. I only did it with
I always fight him, so to hear you say that, I was like, oh, really? Having you experience new things in the game that for me are old friends. Yeah,
and for me, it's like, it's not that I don't know who the boss is or I've never seen it before. I'm just like, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm not going out of my way. Like, I don't care. And then by the time we did it, I think I was so overpowered anyway. We friggin' beat the shit out of him in like a second.
Yeah.
But it was fun to do. Like, like I enjoyed it. It was a cool boss battle. I'm like, oh, okay, that was neat. I'm not gonna do it again, but that was cool.
Yeah, everything's more enjoyable online in that game. And that's the thing. Playing offline was fine for me because that's how I normally would experience any game. And,
Right.
I considered the game a single player game with online elements, and I didn't really want to, play with strangers necessarily. But I enjoyed the notion that there were kind of like echoes of other players running around the world. And I thought it was cool that it gave the sense of like a parallel world. Like everyone is playing the same game, but we're all in our own version of our own journey, and we can cross over and help each other out on those journeys. And obviously there's benefits to that with like getting extra souls from helping someone out or whatever, or covenants and increasing, your standing in a covenant by doing whatever they require. Mostly it's just, like the Sun Bros are just helping people defeat bosses and whatnot. And things like that. But playing offline, the difficulty of the game, I definitely thought lived up to the name at the time. Everything was extremely hard to play solo, but it was nothing. I really didn't feel like it was this impossible thing. In fact, I feel like now that we've been playing co-op together, I feel like if I play offline, I almost feel rusty, like I've relied too much on, like playing with someone else to be just
definitely.
as strong.
But the thing to me about that is I've done it by myself so many times. I'm like, I don't care if I do it alone or with somebody. I just like to play. Like, I just like to play around in that world at this point. Like, I'm not playing it again for the first time for the story or to find out how to play this way. Like, I already know how to play. I just like to do it. Like, oh, I'll play with you. That'll give me like an excuse to go back to the game, because I wouldn't just play it alone by myself anymore at this point.
That's pretty much my experience offline. It was very fun. It did remind me of Zelda in a way. It just has its own merits, to stand on. They probably would view them. I know they've said it. They're like extremely flattered to hear that they were compared to Zelda, because that's their inspiration. But, a lot of developers are inspired by that and would love to be compared to that in a positive way. But I think it has enough originality and cleverness to, stand on its own feet.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I'm pretty sure,
yeah, 100%.
The whole series has, and it shows that, From Software is capable of making games that, that are on their own level, that should be equally respected and anticipated, and enjoyed for many years. And like you were saying, it's a game you could come back to at any time, like Mario 64, for me, like Mario 3, just a game you could pick up and you're immediately like, I'm playing. Like there's no like, hour-long initial tutorial. There's nothing impeding you when you're playing. You're just having fun. You're just going, and that's that. So like playing online in that game compared to, modern games at the time, or I guess even now, is like there's just unique things to the game. The whole way they present online isn't exactly clear at first, but once you start to understand, they kind of create their own language in the game. The concept of humanity, enabling or disabling online activity is interesting.
It's got its own lingo, everything.
Also, we've talked about it, but where people can leave the messages, but you could also rate them. So anytime mostly you'll see after a boss, a lot of people celebrate, and you could add to that, like I did it too, or
I did it.
Yeah. And then you have invasion. That's a concept in games. Like any single player game you play.
Very good. That's actually the ultimate form of communication. If you don't go into Starbucks, 7-Eleven, or McDonald's or anything, if you have to go when they're like when the thing goes off in the drive-thru and they're like, "Hi, how can I help you?" You hello, and then they're just like they wait a bit and they're like, "So what can I get you?" And you're just like, "Very good." And then you just compliment them the whole time. And then you eventually order, and then you get your food. Thank you. Nobody wants to talk to that guy, but I would laugh.
Yeah, that would be, that's an inside joke. If they did get it, that'd be amazing.
It's probably not going to happen.
That would really show mainstream appeal. But for the online elements of Invasion, what other games really have something like that where you're playing through this thing and people can come in and try to kill you and like fuck up your day?
Well, none, because the idea of that sounds awful.
Yeah.
Like, who makes a game and they're like, what would be great if someone could just come into your game and just mess up your whole progress and make you want to shut the game off? Like, it's such a bold move to make, but it's something that we just accept about the series. We're like, oh yeah, that's just a part of it's just a part of the game. Like, if it's only okay when I do it, but I hate it when it's done to me.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, absolutely.
That's how you make you feel. Like you go and kill someone, you're like, yeah, I came into your house and I took your clothes. But then like when someone does it to you, it's like, it's the worst. You feel like wronged. You really feel wronged. Like, how could they do this to me? You send hate mail. Like, there's nothing worse than that feeling. You're like, dude, I had one humanity left. I was just trying to summon a dude for this boss, and you came up in my house. You came up in my house and just took me down. Like, it's like the worst feeling. And then when they point down on you, they don't even bow. They do like the respect, like they shake their head. Like, I didn't want to battle. I didn't want to do that. You made me do that. And now you're going to get mad at me because I lost.
Yeah, that happened to us a lot when we played online. And we would want to just summon. And
yeah, because now online works so people can actually do it.
Yeah, so our humanity would be really low, or mine would. And then I'd have to farm humanity because someone invaded me and like killed me. And that's part of it. But it's also like, it's very annoying. And it's very
it's frustrating as hell. And you can't farm humanity until you're in the chasm of the abyss, which is like, it's good that they put that in there, but like if you're trying to play with someone from the beginning, you're gonna have to get lucky and hope no one just like destroys that for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's a total random chance. Like, you could get invaded or you could not. It all depends on other players and what they're doing, and it often makes you think, like, the time of day you're playing, you're like, this person's just sitting around all day. Like, are they just doing this all day and invading people? Like, do they have that kind of time? And it's kind of funny. It makes you think that. It makes you get that, that mentality. But at the same time, they're probably just laughing and having the time of their life with the game. And they probably have explored everything. And this is like all they have left, so.
Yeah, it's not something I do. It's not like I find like no fun in it. I like to play the game.
Yeah.
But like saying that someone likes to invade doesn't mean they're not playing the game. It's just definitely not for me. I more enjoy leveling up my guy, like doing things on my own, summoning a friend that I want to play with. I'm not interested in getting murdered and losing all of my things. But it really do be like that sometimes.
It's like playing a different game mode, but without saying it's a different game mode.
Right?
Just like PvP or anything.
It's crazy. And it's one of the things that makes Dark Souls, compared to other games, how it really separates itself. It's such like a loose game where it's like you're put in this and you just go. Where it's like most games, nowadays, even some of the most critically acclaimed games today, and I'm not saying, we're not saying that they're bad or anything. I love The Last of Us. I loved all the Uncharted series. Like, I had a lot of fun with those games, but those games are built so that you don't lose, because they just want you to play this section to get to the cool cutscene in 4K. And Dark Souls does absolutely none of that. They're like, basically you feel like their motto is like, a game is for playing, not watching. And it's very cool to know that there's still developers out there who do that. And for the story driven games, like, that doesn't mean that they're not games, but it seems as though like that's been like the only focus in recent years, is that, you know, we don't want to make a game that's too hard because we want people to play it and we want them to like it. But it's gone so far where it's like they hold your hand, and it's kind of like, I'm not an idiot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need a tutorial. I don't need, like, I've been playing games for a minute now. Like, just let me play, you know? Like, I just want to play the damn game. Let me play.
Yeah, that kind of design is very interesting to me, because I always think that, you know, they should find a way to ask the player, kind of like, oddly enough, in like a Kirby game, they will be like, do you know how this works? Like, have you played a Kirby game before? And you could say yes and immediately skip that and get to the game. And I feel like if most games implemented that today, and they were like, okay, they're like, would you like safety nets on? Or would you like us to respect that you want difficulty?
That you're an adult.
Yeah, that you're an adult and you have experience. But not, you know, then there's the, oh, you want it difficult, right? Do you? And then it's just like ridiculously, you know, unfair, hard. So I feel
it's just unbalanced.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I hate when games make me choose a difficulty. Like, just, why can't I play the game as you intended? Like, show me how the game is meant to be played. I don't want to tailor it to myself. Then I feel like, okay, if I play on easy, it's going to be like stupid easy. And then if I play on hard, it's going to be like, oh, is this like hard, like it should be hard because normal's not hard enough? Or is it going to be like ridiculously hard and normal actually is the balance, like where it should be played? Like, if normal is normal, why don't you just make the game normal? Like, just make it that way, you know? I don't really like choosing difficulties. I love when you go in a game and it's just like, here's how it works, get used to it, learn how to play, and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I kind of like, I feel like maybe Marvel Spider-Man didn't really fit into, like, a game like that is obviously gonna have, you know, there's no shot you're gonna get a game like that and it's not gonna tell you to choose a difficulty, because something like that where it's like a Marvel superhero game, like, they're gonna want it to be 100% accessible. I mean, I always played straight down the middle because I feel like that's the intention, and it kind of did well in keeping the cutscenes interesting and the gameplay interesting, which is where, you know, it kind of found a good balance. I thought that game, Dark Souls takes that extreme where it's like the game will tell you everything. And, you know, it's not that there's no cutscenes, but the cutscenes are more of like it's more of like, I feel like what cutscenes used to be years ago in a game, where it was like a reward.
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, I got this item, so I get to see this cool thing of my guy walking up to like Sif's grave and stuff before I fight him. Like, they usually use it to introduce bosses or like a new, like, that moment where they pan up to Anor Londo is one of the most recognizable scenes of the game to me. And how long is it? Like 2 seconds. Like, it doesn't take long to put something, like, give you an impact of something. Like, here's this massive playground that you're about to get thrown into. It's like you get a second to look at it and they're like, this is where you're going, and then they drop you in there and you immediately feel ridiculously small. And that's a better way of showing me your game than forcing me to sit there and then be able to, like, put the controller down for a minute. Like, I really don't want to be able to do that, because that can take you out of a game. If you're doing gameplay for a minute, and then you're watching like a 15-minute cutscene, and then all of a sudden you get thrown back in the game, and you're like, oh, I'm back to the game now. You know, like that, I don't like feeling like that. I feel like cutscenes should be quick and like a cool, rewarding feature. Like, oh, that was a cool little cutscene. That was cool. Like, oh, that's my custom guy. I get to like see him in an up close, like, cool shot before the battle. Like, stuff like that is cool. Telling me the game in that way and making a movie out of it can get obnoxious at some points, and I feel like it sacrifices what the game could have been.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. And games, you know, a good game like Dark Souls, I think, you know, the difficulty would be experience and knowledge based, being that they want you to fail and they want you to learn from failure and then proceed only if you learn. And you will fail again and again, but the more you learn, the better off you'll be, rather than like some of the more modern games where I'm pretty sure you mentioned, but you're guaranteed to win more or less. And if you don't win more or less, they'll probably drop your difficulty, or at least ask you to, and you could say yes or no, but you can make it easier on yourself, and then really like they want you to see the credits of games. Whereas Dark Souls, I'm sure there are many, many people who put it down and didn't complete it, and that's unfortunate. But as a game, I think for the things that it takes from classic games, of what I'm really looking for in any game, I'm not too keen on the more cinematic movie-like approach if it means that it takes away the player's control more often. And I think a game like Dark Souls respects the past. And that means to me that when games came out, or if you play any classic retro titles that are worth playing, mainly I think in this example we'll talk about Capcom and like a Mega Man game or something, where it feels like the developer is directly challenging the player, and they designed this little trap that they want you to try to overcome, or challenges to overcome. And they do it for well thought out reasons, and it's always about a rewarding outcome at the end. It's always supposed to make you feel good. And I feel like the bar has been set lower for more modern games to try to make you feel good more often, rather than having it feel earned. And that
some games will legitimately just play themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that execution, is just so important to nail. When I play a game and I feel like the developer is not challenging me, and they are just like, you're just gonna glide through this, like I lose interest. Like I could drop off a game like that easily, even though people could praise it for all the cutscenes and all the beautiful voice acting and music.
Oh man, it looks so good.
Yeah, and I don't take away from all the money and effort and and all this other stuff that goes into making a modern game like that. But it's just something that, as someone who's played for a very long time, I'm kind of done with that, and I want games to evolve in a way that's more interesting and more engaging. And I honestly want more difficult, but I don't want the difficulty to be crushingly like unfair. I think when I think of that, I think of,
you want a game that you have to learn.
Yeah, when I think of
whenever
unfair,
there's a game that has a learning curve, you always feel like you always get that sense of accomplishment for like figuring it out and being able to play it.
Yeah, when I think of unfair, I think of like Call of Duty on the hardest difficulty, and they're just like throwing grenades at you constantly. They will respawn endlessly. There's no like, oh, I cleared them all out, I can proceed. And I think that's just like, you may make it through, you might not. It's really random luck. And I feel like that's not well designed at all. And like, no one should take that as an example of how to make your game hard. It's like, that's not the way. And it's not something you remember in a good way. I remember it as though like, as an example of what not to do, So one of the things about Dark Souls and its difficulty that I really appreciate is that they put an emphasis on your identity, your look that you can customize entirely. It's not the only game to do that, obviously, but speaking specifically for it, you really appreciate how your guy, or your woman is made, and how they look, and their color and their eye color, and if they're small or skinny or fat, or like whatever, however you want them to be is how they will be. And it creates a sense of,
which doesn't even always affect your stats, but it's just how you want your character to look.
No, yeah, so that goes into the whole creation system. So you start off with your look, and then you go and you pick your play style, or I guess your class, and then you have different minute stats, from the different classes, like your knight, your thief, pyromancer, whatever, you can go naked if you want and have no stats. But the point is that kind of
the deprived stat.
Yeah, it influences your initial, start. And for the beginner player, that's really important. For someone who's been playing for a while, that it's not, and you can play as any class pretty much and get away with it, and that you'll change it later on. But initially, the difficulty is really important because you get to pick like the item, like that your secret item or whatever, and
yeah, which is interesting because they don't tell you what it. I mean, they tell you what it does, but I mean, obviously as of now, we know to pick the key.
Oh yeah,
because,
yeah.
That gives you the shortcuts.
Yeah, of course, and you wouldn't know that initially. I mean, I honestly think I must have picked something that like the black firebomb or something that it can be useful, of course, but you'd want to pick the key probably.
Well, yeah, because you read it and it's like, oh, it explodes fire, and you're like, that sounds sick.
Yeah,
I'll kill stuff with that, and then like you realize it becomes real meaningless real quick.
Right. And there's a difference, I'm pretty sure I've played games where you could pick a permanent item throughout the whole game or something that is perishable. Like, and this game, is that as well. So anyways, you could use the class you start as and the item you pick to raise or lower the difficulty, and overall it adds a quality to make you feel like, I know it's a role-playing game, but it's like, you're the player. Like, it's like you're Link, like you're this guy. Or how, and you can name him whatever silly name you want or name him something serious. You could do whatever you want. And it's not like you're selecting easy, normal, hard, or any difficulty setting. But there is a way, and the game does this in every regard. It allows you to pick difficulty without saying you're picking difficulty. And it allows you to play online without saying exactly that you're playing online. And it allows you to even try different online modes without there being like an online menu like that you would go through before you play the game and like select, like quick play or, like co-op or PvP mode. Like you do all of this organically within the world. It pretty much for the most part makes sense in game. It's very well thought out and it's appreciated. And it makes me think of like, I hope more games do things like this, but specifically, I hope Nintendo latches onto some of these ideas because I understand why they don't adapt to, I guess you would say, more Western ideas in terms of online and its functionality. But I think they would better off to look at a game like Dark Souls and be like, oh, so this is how you could do it in a creative and fun way. It doesn't have to be beaten over your head. Yeah, because
they don't, they're not traditional. They like to go think outside the box, and that's a great design choice. That's a great way to do that. And I mean, it's great to see the friendly connection between a company like Nintendo and From Software. Like I mean, imagine getting like an exclusive for Nintendo, like a From Software exclusive. That would be amazing. I mean, it's wishful thinking, but you could see Demon Souls on Switch. It could run on the Switch.
Yeah.
If Dark Souls 1 could, I think it's possible Dark Souls 2 could. I'm not sure about Dark Souls 3, but then again, we don't even know in 2019 if they'll make the Switch more powerful. They definitely could have. They could have, but they like to keep costs down, and I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's definitely been working very well for them. The Switch has been selling very well, and I think my best Dark Souls runs have been on the Switch version. I've thoroughly enjoyed playing it on the Switch. I mean, taking Dark Souls on the go is like something that wasn't even a thought in my head when I first got Dark Souls, that I would be playing this like in the car or something like that. Like I never thought that. So that's been really awesome. I've really enjoyed that. Those have been my best playthroughs, and that's been my playthrough with you. Is our co-op has been on Switch.
That's interesting that you mentioned portability being such a factor you never considered. Considering the game came out at a time when the 3DS released that same year. And obviously you wouldn't think, Dark Souls would ever come to the 3DS. But the point is that now the game is on. We've made such a jump. It's either that or the 3DS overstayed its welcome is probably what it is. And
Definitely.
then you go from that to jumping to the future and saying like, okay, here's to make up for lost time. Now you can play, a portable game in a console setting, I guess. I mean, I guess Vita kind of had, the horsepower to, do something like that. But, that, it's not, no one's playing Vita. So,
no
so Switch, the point I'm trying to make is like having Dark Souls on Switch obviously has its benefits, but it's also, it feels at home. Like, and I really, I feel like games like from the past, like Castlevania or even Mega Man, I feel like they had a home on Nintendo consoles, and to not have them around nowadays, or not have them as much. I know Mega Man's back, but it's multi-platform now. Dark Souls is too, but to have it on the Switch at last, or just be part of Nintendo, it's like you're very welcome, like to be in this, part of this. You fit right in. And it's a violent game, but it's not like obscene, like
you're not talking like Mortal Kombat violence,
right? And even that's coming like to Switch now too. But in the past, one of the biggest things that stands out to me as Nintendo trying to branch out, this is how like shocking it is when the Wii U came out and you would start up the system and you would see like a gun icon for one of the games, and seeing like a handgun icon, I forget exactly what game it was, but seeing that as a part of like Nintendo Land and all these other titles at the time, you're just like, whoa, like a gun, like like on a Nintendo console. Like, it's not like they've never done anything violent, but it just shows you how far they've come and how like relaxed they are now. And that's where they need to be, where they're more welcoming. I saw that on Wii U, it was like kind of shocking. It was funny, really, because it's like, you guys should have been doing this the whole time. But it makes it a point of like, we're family friendly, but we're going to have this extremely, violent imagery, and it's just like, okay, it's actually at this point, and I don't know what year you think it is, but it's like everyone's totally okay with that. It's chill. Like, kids experience violent things all the time. It's not, in media all across everything. It's not something to be shocked at anymore. It's pretty okay.
Now you boot up your Switch and it has a real like sleek like design. There's nothing childish about it. It's like you're booting up a normal game console. You don't have little cartoon Mii's running around. Like, it's just like you boot. You know what? And it's great thing about it is it feels at home, specifically because Dark Souls is a game where I want to turn my Switch on. I want it to be right there, and I can just play a game. You look at Xbox One, and it's like the games are on the bottom left little tile.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the game is like the least important thing. Like, you turn your Switch on, it comes out of sleep mode in half a second, like a brand new computer. There's no startup screen, nothing. Turns on, there's your game, play. And that's why Dark Souls feels so at home, because that's a game you want to jump right in. You don't want no loading, no nothing. You just want to play. And let me tell you, it works beautifully on Switch. I get exactly what you mean by saying that it feels right at home on that console.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm sitting here and I want to turn this into like Switch praise, but give credit where credit is due. One of the biggest complaints I have about modern gaming is the fact that most systems take a while to boot up. You have updates upon updates that take forever. Sometimes when you get a brand new game from the store or whatever, you get out of work, you just want to play a new game. You have to wait like a couple hours before you can even play it. And this isn't something that we're all familiar with. This, we all like accept this, but I've always been like, I hate this. I want, just like GameCube or Nintendo 64 or Super Nintendo or even PS2, like, I just want to start the game, turn on the power, like, boom, I'm in it, like, bam, like, I'm ready to go. Like, that's what a gaming console is. I could honestly do without a lot of the the extra multimedia functions if it means that I can get into the game. And the thing is I don't see why those, having, movie functionality or streaming or music or a different shop or other things should stop you from the main. Like, there should be an option, at least on Xbox or PS4, that's just like gaming priority mode. Like where you start
what I bought the system for mode.
Yeah, exactly. And of course they have now where you boot the system and you're jumping right back where you were. I think that's a functionality that across the board everyone's onto. Like Switch has it. I know Xbox has it. I think PlayStation has it. Where it pauses your progress or whatever, and you can jump right back into the game without having to like boot it from the start or something. And something like that should be the standard. And it all should be about making it as easy as possible for you to jump into this world. And it is I love how you put it. It's exactly why I enjoy it so much, and I feel like it's at home. Besides the fact that they got their own amiibo, with Solaire. And to me, I like collecting them, the amiibos, because growing up, I never thought the figures that they made for Nintendo stuff were all that great. They were a little chintzy at times, or even straight up bootleg. But now they like make pretty decent, affordable figures for every character. So when you start thinking about third party and who belongs, I'm pretty happy with like the people they pick or the games they pick. Like Shovel Knight is one. I feel like that's earned, but having Dark Souls be one is very earned, I feel. And it's something that I'm just like, yeah, like you definitely belong. Like, I joke around, but I honestly would love to see Dark Souls in Smash in some way. And obviously there's so many other franchises to pick from at this point, but that's something that sticks. The game itself, not even the franchise as a whole, but that game sticks out as something that definitely deserves some recognition on the whole. And right. A lot of this year we're getting a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2 praise, and it earns all its praises and whatnot. But it's like, if you ask me like how I felt, like, Dark Souls, you like Dark Souls or Red Dead Redemption 2 more? And I'm like, there's no question in my mind, Dark Souls is a better video game. Red Dead Redemption is a better cinematic experience that has gameplay elements, but it's not even just Red Dead,
which doesn't make it bad.
No,
that's just your preference.
Yeah, no, I totally want to, that's just my preference. So, I have a real problem right now with not being able to fully enjoy these titles that are coming out nowadays. When Dark Souls Remastered came out, I didn't really think I'd be that into it. I wanted it on Switch out of all the other consoles for some reason, even though it's technically worse, but I just like it, the portability, just the fact that it's a Nintendo console. And I own all the consoles, so it's, it's whatever. But I played all the games, this year, and I played them 100%, so when I'm at the end of these games, I'm not getting the same satisfaction that I have throughout the whole experience of Dark Souls. When I played it with you, the remastered, it is a classic. Like, it's been it's only 2011 till now, but I think it's been enough time to reflect enough upon it to be like, this is the feeling you get when you boot up a classic game. I could start up Ocarina of Time right now and love the hell out of every second, even though I've played that game so many times and I know everything about it. Or Mario 3 or Mario 64, or many other titles you could pick examples of, not just Nintendo titles, but those stick out to me because I'm a huge Nintendo fan. So,
Right. No, I am too. I love all games, but Nintendo's got that spot. It's got that charm. No one else can pull. Xbox can pull off what PS4 can do, and vice versa. But Nintendo's always in a league of its own. Whether you think it's better or lower, it's its own.
It always feels extra special to me. Whereas other people can bring horsepower to the table, and all the technical advances and the standards, that we come to expect. And then Nintendo, even if they don't live up to all those standards that we enjoy, it somehow surpasses them in ways. It does fall short in other ways, but it surpasses in some ways, and it's really interesting because you can get frustrated with them, of course, about a great many things, but at the end, of the day, they're my pick for who I'm most interested in and who I think will put out a game that I feel will be like compelling or original or unique or just straight up fun. And although they didn't make Dark Souls, certainly they made things that inspired it,
which is why it feels like it belongs with them on that console.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the other things I wanted to mention about Dark Souls specifically, not just Nintendo praise, is that like co-op, now that I've experienced it, and as for playing offline for so many years, and I think the game highly encourages me to feel less alone, where before I was just on this solemn journey through the grim and brutal world that is Dark Souls. But now I'm like, hey, I can have, I can call my boy Larry and like invite him, or like, and say, hey, you want to, beat this boss with me or something, or you want to run through this area with me? And it's something obviously you could do at this point with no problem by yourself. But I feel I can fully appreciate the intention of that system of the game, being co-op.
Yeah, because that's definitely what it was meant to be.
Yeah.
You could even argue that the game was ahead of its time. It almost had some areas that were too ambitious for what the consoles of that generation can handle. And being able to, like, I played it on Xbox 360 the first time, PS4, and then I got a PS4 Pro while I was playing, and so I played some playthroughs on PS4 Pro, and now I've played even on Nintendo Switch, and it's just like playing it on the newer generation consoles now, PS4 Pro and Switch. It's like that's like the definitive version of the game. It's like, okay, this is what they 100% intended. Like, if they had this technology today, this is what it would have been.
Definitely. The remastered version is like, it's very welcome. And I remember when it was coming out, a lot of people were upset or refused to get it. They were being a little snobby about it, especially if they played it on PC with all the mods and, the fan-made upgrades or fixes or whatever you want to call them. And I always thought, like, I've experienced that myself, and it didn't make me think anything other than, wow, they themselves are putting out an official, new paint job to fix all these problems and namely make the online stable. And to me, that spelled one thing, that was reinvigorating a whole new community of old and new players coming together to enjoy this game. And that it would have a high amount of people playing. So you could then kind of experience it, with a high peak of players. And that to me is where it's at its best.
Right, because if you were to boot it up on Xbox 360 right now, you wouldn't exactly find no one to play with.
Right. And to me, that's a very sad thing, and that's something that through the magic of being able to re-release a game, because you would think, oh, it's not like the game was in HD when it came out, but it's like you can make it look HD, but better HD. It's like there's...
Well, not only that, other issues like frame rate and
of
such.
Course,
the hardware is just better to play on.
Absolutely. And that's a huge thing. That is very important, to design your game in such a way to kind of... they probably didn't really think of this, but to design it in such a way that if it does re-release, there are things that will be improved, such as, frame rates and load times and all these other things. And some newer games don't exactly take that into mind. They think, they just think about the here and now, which is okay, but it's also a little short-sighted because, most games that come out, you're going to want to play in the future on your newer consoles that may or may not have backwards compatibility. And you definitely do want there to be backwards compatibility. But if there's not, you'll want a re-release, and you hopefully that game, will be made to run better. That is the standard to make a new game come out with, higher frame rate. Usually it's 60 FPS and then better textures and all this and that, kind of giving it like that, what people have on the PC already, that ultra settings bump is what I can relate it to. So as for the final thing on the co-op is that when you are showing another player's secrets, I feel like for me and you specifically, I liked, you've played the game so many times, but like when I played through the DLC, I hadn't really played through before, and we were fighting Manus, and he has the black fire or whatever it is, his magic.
God, he's pretty. It's strange because it's like that's your reward for getting to the end of the DLC. Now you fight this guy.
Well, my point specifically about that was, you have a certain style that you play through where you kind of cut out all the things you deem unnecessary and strictly go for what you feel is needed. And I have such a slow and plodding way of going about playing, and it has its benefits and its drawbacks. Like I end up wasting a lot of time exploring and picking up items that aren't necessarily going to be used. But I also ended up finding some secret walls that they needed, the messages anyways kind of tipped it away. They said I needed light to get through them, which is unique for that area in Olasil. And you get the spell to use light, but you also could use the sunlight maggot helmet to get through them. And then you get like that little pendant charm that when you use it, it dispels the black magic. And for me, that was something that I found, and it was like an organic thing. And I figured out, its function, and I was utilizing it. And then when we got to Manus, we were, dreading the fight because I had never fought it before. But, you could tell it's, that it was going to be a difficult fight. Plus, you told me. We did it in our game anyways, for me. We did it the first try. And I thought that was really amazing. Like, you could take, that approach and discover something new and for yourself to be like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like that definitely changes that fight a little bit to make it something that's really fucking hard to like, oh, okay, there's like a way to not take incredible amounts of damage, all the time.
Right, because no matter what your health was or your armor, like that, it would just eat through. So to have something that could dispel it would give you it gives you a way to deflect against it. Now, I've never even done it with that. I've always done it without it because I don't know, I'm lazy. I don't want to go get it. I don't want to use it. Like, I'm just want to win now. And then they never go back there again. But my favorite boss fight in the whole game is in that DLC area, the Artorias fight. Yeah. I think I've done like 1,000,000 times. That it's so fun. I love replaying it with other people and such.
It's such a cool area at the Coliseum. He's obviously an incredibly well-designed character. And then
his lore is fantastic as well.
Yeah, a lot of the game's lore revolves around him too. So to see it come together and finally see like the legend, especially if you play a later game like Dark Souls 3 and you're, the Abyss Watchers, and you're realizing that there's a connection, or there could be a connection. There is, it's implied. Everything's implied and meant to interpret.
Yeah, they also say he might have a connection to the Hunters of Bloodborne.
Right. And so that guy sticks out, even though he isn't the hardest fight. I mean, maybe others would consider him really hard, but like he fights like a player, like a dirty player.
Yeah. He's just out to kill you. He doesn't care how he gets it done.
We've talked about a lot, with this game, But one of the things, that I wanted to talk about was like specifically someone else that I was talking to, and they had pretty much encapsulated what I think is the point about this game and classic games versus modern. And they were talking about the Super Nintendo Classic, and they had said, playing that, they were like, I had so much fun playing, those old classic games, and it made them want to build a time machine. And they're like, some of that is just nostalgia, but a lot of those old games were just so fun to play in comparison to some of the newer games out there for the new systems. Some of those new games seem more like mini movies, and occasionally you get to have some input. So my point is, we kind of touched upon this, but it's like the overall point is there's nothing wrong with production values or amazing cinematics or even orchestral scores as your music. Dark Souls itself has that, but it's all about...
Yeah, that's some fantastic music.
Yeah, it's all about taking away control from the player, and that's something Dark Souls very rarely does.
Yeah, but, especially when it comes to music, you can have great music and still be playing the game. Especially look at a game like Ocarina of Time, where it's like part of the music is the game.
Yeah, I love that they introduced... It's not only for like... Imagine you're a kid. You're probably going to get interested in playing an instrument. Maybe not the ocarina or something. Maybe. I remember I wanted one as a kid, but it's like, I ended up playing guitar, but it's like in Majora's Mask, you play a guitar as the Zora. So I always loved like wailing away on that thing. So making music an important part of your game, of course, is interesting as well.
Which is an element very unique to that series.
Yeah. And Dark Souls music is also unique. You're not playing an instrument, but the instruments in the game and the whole atmosphere and all the epicness of the boss fights, they truly they grasp you. It's something that fits incredibly well, and you're just like blown away at the accompaniment. It is...
And they even know when to not use music, like when you're in the tomb of the giants and it's just quiet and all you hear is like the enemies rustling around, but you can't really see them. Like they always manage a way to really create a fantastic atmosphere for whatever area in the game that you find yourself in.
Yeah, definitely. And it's usually saved for those big moments. It's meant to feel impactful, and it's remembered as being impactful and used tastefully at the right moment. It's something that honestly, if we're talking about a modern game, Breath of the Wild had music and it used it sparingly. I honestly, I like the trailer music for that game more than probably the music in the game itself, because they used it so little. So that's a game where I feel like they maybe mismanaged the amount of music that should be played, because they were playing with the conventions of the series. Maybe, many people might disagree and say, oh, using it less is better. Dark Souls uses it less as well, but it also is incredibly amazing when it uses it. And I don't have any complaints about that game not having music. Whereas Breath of the Wild,
right,
Zelda as a whole, I expect there to be tunes playing. I expect there to be an overworld theme playing away, strumming away that you can hum to and sing, and it really gets you in the action. That game is more about exploring nature, I guess, and hearing the sounds of nature rather than the sounds of music.
I consider it a missed mark for that series.
Right. And that's what I was saying. That's exactly how it is. You could even look at all the pros of it and why they would do what they would do, but I still don't agree with it, and I don't agree it was a good choice.
Yeah, you can get why they did it, but I don't agree.
Right, that's the whole point. So, Dark Souls, I fully agree with it. I don't think that game has any mismanaged sound design. Whereas, I'm just saying, a game like God of War or Red Dead or even Spider-Man, they all have music used at different times, and it's very grand and epic feeling and majestic or twangy, and it all fits. And I really can't say I have too much problem with the music or sound design. That's the least of its issues, if it has any, But Dark Souls definitely doesn't. And something like Breath of the Wild I bring it up because it's a Breath of the Wild is a modern game that has issues for me. That isn't a cinematic game, so it's like not all cinematic games are bad, and or not even bad, but I don't really get that engrossed in them. Whereas Breath of the Wild is a game, and I loved the game. I had over like 300 hours in that game, playing every single Zelda, and I mean every single Zelda, including all the bad ones, or just even like ROM hacks or lost versions of certain games or whatever. It's like I know that game series. It's my number one, next to like Mario or something. And I know exactly all the influences they're taking from. It's not like I play Breath of the Wild and I'm like, oh, I remember way back when I was a kid and they're, Zelda 1, this reminds me of that. It's like, no, I like played Zelda 1 like yesterday. Like I know what influences they're taking from and what they're going for. And this isn't really a conversation about Zelda, but it's to bring the point of just because it's a modern game doesn't mean it's bad. And each game on its own stands on its own merits, no matter the time period. And that's why you could say a game like Dark Souls is timeless and classic, whereas Breath of the Wild, obviously people love it to pieces. And I do too, but I also can say, hey, sound design's a little off. Where are the actual temples? Things like that, like...
Whereas when I look back at Dark Souls, I don't want to change anything.
I don't have any complaint. I don't think, oh, it was missing that, or I wish it had this, or that was fun, but there is no that. I have none of that to say about the first Dark Souls. 2, yeah, but it's like that's a different conversation about why.
Yeah, that's why.
Why sequels in games.
That's a game I wouldn't even go back to play just to talk about it. Like I played it and I don't feel the need to play it again.
Right. I was going to say that topic we'll talk about. It's about sequels that missed the mark and somehow the third entry swings a home run again. So,
which is great, which really is great, but it's an odd pattern that Sam specifically brought up to me, and I was like, huh, you're right. That is weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's a pattern that's there, but nobody really talks about it.
Yeah, it's notable enough to have a pretty good discussion about, and we will. But, it just, it falls into the Dark Souls trilogy, I guess, that conversation. But...
yeah, it definitely applies to the Dark Souls trilogy.
But specifically about Dark Souls, I mean, I'm pretty sure we're like, we made our points.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could definitely tell that we're both huge fans of that game and that series and the From Software company as a whole. I respect them. I quickly respected them as one of the best in the game right now, and I'm looking forward to their newest installment, Sekiro.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I really want to see, I'm like nervous that it's not the same formula, but like they should be branching out. They should be trying something new, and I'm looking forward to it. But in the vein of Dark Souls, it is a 10 out of 10 for me. I mean, there are still people who haven't played it. If you've played it and you got frustrated and you put it down because you said this game was too hard, pick it up one more time. Try it again. It's not a bad thing to look it up and see how other people have gone through the game or look up how to do something. I'm never saying that you have to go into it blind and get frustrated, but having a little guidance goes a long way. Once you get the hang of it and how the game works, that's when you truly get to enjoy the game, because it's one of those games that once you think you've made the biggest accomplishment in the game, you've only opened 10 more doors to go through. And every time it's over, I'm like, oh, it's over. Like, I didn't want it to end. And then I just play it again. But, to me, it's a classic. It's something no matter how many times they re-put it on a system, I'll buy it again and I'll play it at least twice on that system. I played it 3 times on PS4. I played it twice on Switch so far. I played it multiple times on Xbox 360. And I would continue to play it again and again and again. And, you know, I know you've said the same thing about Ocarina of Time. If Ocarina of Time came out again tomorrow, I'd play that again too. Like, that's where I put Dark Souls. I put it in the category of like a Super Mario 64, an Ocarina of Time, and then there's Dark Souls. Like, just one of those games that I can always jump into, I can always play. The design has always been something I've cherished, I've admired, and like I said from the beginning, the best word to describe it is clever. It's such a clever series. Everything, there's so much thought to everything, and as someone like me, and even more so you, Sam, who loves to collect everything, there is a lot to be collected and to be seen in this game and to be discovered. And every time I play it, like I said, I find something new that I didn't see last time. And to me, that's if that doesn't say timeless, man, I don't know what does. To be honest with you, I don't know what does then.
Yeah, for sure. I fully agree. Like, I often, you know, that's what this whole thing was about, is it's a timeless game. Like, it stands up there with the greats, and it's something that, you know, if you don't grasp, and one of the things I could understand is maybe you don't get the controls at first. It is different. It is unique to the Souls series, you know, like having a weapon, two items in like your left hand or right hand, you know, having up on the D-pad be, you know, switching, you know, between various magical abilities, whether it's miracles or pyromancies, and having the down on the D-pad be all your items that you could use. I understand how you might not like get it, you know, at first. It is definitely something that, you know, most games nowadays, not only are they easy, but they have a standardized control scheme that across the board, you know, they're pretty much the same, more or less. You know, like all shooters, kind of, you know how to play them already. You know, like right stick, if you click it in, it'll probably be like a melee, or if you click in, you know, like a stab or something, or if you click in the left stick, it'll be run or sprint. And, you know, left trigger would be...
Yeah, developers don't want to go against that norm.
Yeah, left trigger would be like the zoom in on the scope. You know, right trigger would be shoot. You know, things like that. And they'll change things here and there, but for the most part, they definitely don't want any new players to feel like they have to have any effort at all to like get into this. And I kind of get that for accessibility reasons, but it kind of conflicts with like a game being able to try something new and be on its own and not conform to the same thing that everyone else does.
Right.
Like Katamari Damacy also does this, where it has its own unique control scheme that is very easy once you get the hang of it and you don't even think about it. But initially you're like, how do I roll? And it's such a simple game. Like, how do I roll this little guy around? And then you realize like, oh, I have to move both sticks in the same direction at the same time. Like if I want to move left, I move both sticks left. If I want to move right, both sticks right. And then you're off and you're experiencing this very quirky, fun Japanese title that is definitely an embodiment of like an acid trip. But it's like, it's super fun. The music is great. Like it's very catchy. You'll be humming it. And like Dark Souls, you know, I'm not going to say you're going to be humming the music of that, but it'll stick with you as like a grand epic moment. And it's usually accompanied by the fact that you struggle to get through that moment and you can overcome it. And when you do, that moment is replicated so many times through the game and on so many different scales that I could say there are very few points in the game where you feel once you're done with it that you're like, fuck that part, like that I hated that like it made me want to like not play anymore. This is coming from when you get a little more experience with the game rather than a beginner, because I could say many people have probably put the game down before and not come back and just been frustrated. But you know, this is a game, and this is the thing with the From Software games, you know, whether it's Bloodborne or Dark Souls, you're meant to die, but it's not really a penalty. Dying has almost no consequences. Besides losing your souls, which you can regain and you can get a ton of, you know, as you go through the game, especially later on, where you can just get as much as you need, you know, through grinding or whatever, or fighting bosses, or summoning and helping other people fight those bosses again, or whatever. Failing has no consequence. Although you lose your souls and stuff, you can just keep going and keep learning about the game, and you'll get better through that. And if you think that dying in Dark Souls is like this thing you should throw your controller about or something, or turn off the game, then you're simply not understanding that in Bloodborne or Dark Souls or 2 or 3, you're not getting that. Those things are more funny to me than anything. Like, yeah, it sucks to die to a boss over and over, especially if you struggle to get to it. But honestly, you will pick up how to get to the boss quicker and quicker, and that's the whole point. It's just like an old school game where you're using memorization to get through the level, and as you go on, you'll get better and better at it, until if you compared your like initial run to like where you are later as far as experience goes, you'll be like, wow, I've come so far. And that's what the game is all about, how far you've come.
Right, exactly.
You start off not knowing anything about this world to mastering it completely, all its intertwining sections and all its secrets, for the most part, many of its secrets, and you come out being super strong with amazing weaponry, and like, I mean, ideally, you come out, on top, and you can warp, and to any of the bonfires in the game pretty much, and you have defeated all these bosses and overcome all this stuff, and every single area and all its enemies, where they are. You could easily dispatch them, or at least avoid them. All the tricks, and that's not just exclusive to Dark Souls, but any kind of Metroid game or Castlevania, like a Symphony of the Night type of game. It's not unique to Dark Souls, but it's still satisfying to have that, and it does it very well, like extremely well, like enough to call it a benchmark. That's why so many things are compared to Dark Souls, and that's why so many games nowadays have elements from those games, namely the souls and dying system as currency. And it's something I kind of roll my eyes a little when I see it.
This game is hard. It's like Dark Souls.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I roll my eyes a little bit when I see newer games use elements from Dark Souls, but it's not. It's only because I'm like, you don't need to do that to be good. But it's like, I appreciate that you're trying to take a thing that is an example of how to do something extremely well and replicate it. And that's, how in the future, I think people will get the hang of how to make their own original ideas work in a way that feels more inspired, rather than just straight replicating, a system such as the Souls system, for currency, and, dying, and, you'll have to go pick up the currency. And if you die on the way there, it's gone forever. But if you pick it up, like, woo, like it's a breath of relief, and you feel good about, having retrieved it. It creates a tense situation, but,
Absolutely, yeah.
And sometimes if I do have a lot of souls and I'm about to lose it or something, I sometimes, like the dying thing, I kind of let go, and I'm just like, it's okay. Just like dying, it's going to be all right. I'll get these souls back. It's not like I had 1 million souls, it's probably like 100 to 200,000 max that I'm going to lose. And although that is time lost and this and that, you'll get it. Like, it's nothing to like never, like, it's not like in a game where you've spent so much time playing and then you lose your save file or something.
No, it's nothing like that.
Yeah, that's when I understand that you don't want to play a game anymore, or you drop it for a while, because that's extremely, genuinely frustrating. And I can't even begin to cope with telling somebody like, oh, it's okay, just boot up again and continue. Everything will be all right. Because that's like so much progress, and genuine. Like, when I play a game and it's my file, like, I feel like that's my game, like, that's my guy, like,
that's my baby.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes something of a you have an attachment to it, and if it gets corrupted or lost, or your sibling deletes it on you or something, it becomes something that I can't. I've done, I've not come back to games for a very long time when that happens, and maybe that's just me, but I feel like a game like Dark Souls, all its difficulty or whatever, we call it difficulty, but it's not. It's just lack of knowledge, right. Lack of experience. It's just like anything in life. The more you learn about it, the better you can handle it.
All you have to do to get better at Dark Souls is just get good.
Yep.
No, just play the damn game and you'll do fine. And I just want to wrap up by saying that I believe what you were saying was reminding me about, the feeling of accomplishment that you get when you take on a game like this and you complete it for the first time. It's like, whoa, like now I get to say I beat Dark Souls. Like everyone says this game's so hard and I beat it. Like, you get that sense of accomplishment, and I can't really think of another game where I feel like that, where it's like, like, oh, did you beat Zelda? It's like, yeah. Did you beat Mario? Yeah. Did you beat this? Yeah. And it's like, did you beat Dark Souls? Yeah, but it was hard though. Not taking anything away from other games. And maybe I shouldn't have even put Zelda because there are some harder parts, but you look at Dark Souls, that's a big game to take on, and I think they make it enjoyable in a sick, dark humor way. But the feeling of accomplishment that you get when you do finish that game and you do get all the endings really is something, and I find that even they haven't really been able to recreate it 100% throughout the rest of the series, because they have made the series more accessible, but that's what makes that game a classic, because it started all that, and it's so referred to, and people talk about it all the time. So unless Sam has anything else left that he wants to say, I'll continue wrapping up the episode. Well, how you feeling over there, Sam? Do you feel like you've poured out enough love for this classic yet?
Well, everything you said was beautifully put, of course, and I agree with much of it. And I think going into this, the swell of what I had to say about this, or what we had to say about it, I think I feel a lot better, talking about it and getting it all off my chest and kind of putting it in perspective of why, through all the games I played this year, 2018, that as good as they are made and as good as they are, playing Dark Souls Remastered, or just playing Dark Souls 1 period, it just showed me that, like, that's what I'm missing, and that's what I miss out of gaming in general, having more experiences like that. And you mentioned, like Zelda being a little difficult, but, and that's true. It's not a guaranteed win. You might have trouble with the combat or the puzzles or something, or just, figuring out where to go, I guess. But I would say most games nowadays are a guaranteed win, and I can't think of...
They want you to see the end.
Yeah, and that's understandable. You pay a certain amount of money for these games. You should technically be able to see the end. But I also feel like part of the charm and my love of gaming specifically is that you're not guaranteed anything. You have to earn it. And when you do, you will be rewarded, and you will remember it, and you will talk about it, and you will think about it. And you will have these profound thoughts. Like, I don't have profound thoughts about the other games this year. Like, I just enjoyed them. It was like a movie experience. It was like I consumed media.
You were along for the ride.
It was entertainment. I was controlling some of it, and everything went dandy. Everything went as planned. But a game like Dark Souls, it kind of reminds me of the old games where, like, imagine you beat Contra or something without the code on NES, the Lives code, or like you beat Mike Tyson in Punch-Out. Like, those things are achievements, like, that you could feel proud about, and they're hard. Personally, without having to talk to anyone else about it, it's hard. But once you do, you realize that everyone agrees with you that this was, really hard, or like something that should stand as a testament of difficulty, or a benchmark rather. And this game, I think, falls in line with that. And then once you get over the hurdle of once you beat that first playthrough, you start to reflect about, your journey. And once you play it again, it all becomes easier every time. I mean, the same thing I could say maybe about the other games, like Contra I mentioned and Punch-Out, but it's like Mike Tyson's still going to be, pretty hard. Contra, still going to be pretty hard. Dark Souls, I feel like, is a game that
gets easier the more you play it.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. I think it has a false sense of being an extremely hard game. It's still very difficult, but it's in a way that I think gamers aren't used to. And I think it's fair. I don't think it's unfair.
Definitely not, because there's a way to beat everything.
And that's really the final, thing to say about it, and why it's one of the best examples of a modern video game, that will be a classic for us for all time, And yeah, Larry, I mean...
Yeah, you'll even hear, we'll constantly refer back to it because we do generally refer back to it a lot in our own personal conversations, definitely.
Yeah, it certainly stands out, and it's earned it, I think. That's one of the things I've been thinking about lately, how it's earned a discussion. And people have covered this game far and wide for years, ever since it came out, and it's everything you would think has been said about it, but I haven't said anything about it until now. So at least in this format, and I certainly have a lot to say about it, about the series, and I hold it in high regard, and for all the reasons we've mentioned. And I would talk about it in the same breath of Zelda or Mario or any of that, and that's saying something. Like that's not something I would just throw out there because it's Dark Souls.
Yeah, it's become a heavy hitter really quickly.
Yeah, and that in a world, I would say, from my perspective, in a world where Castlevania is no longer a game series that's prevalent, they have the Netflix show, which is fantastic, but as far as games, we're missing a little bit of dark, gritty, fighting monsters and shit, and having things be, and I think Bloodborne and Dark Souls both fill the gap and take things in directions that I think improve that kind of genre, that dark gothic atmosphere. And I feel like it goes, the things that it does that are unique are better in some ways. And I really love Castlevania, and I wish it was there to share the gaming space alongside this, because I just want more games that are dark, and hard and challenging. And
oh yeah, definitely, I
want that, and I want them to be well made. Of course, I don't just want anything. I want it to be great. But that's an ideal. And I'm really sad that Castlevania isn't around. I hope something happens, but it'll definitely never be. It's definitely like on the dying side or dead side, so it's a memory for me, whereas I used to hold it just like I hold Dark Souls now, or Zelda or anything. I used to hold it, as this is the best thing around. And I thought it would continue forever, because it hit the nail on the head in so many ways. And it was just something that unfortunately is no longer, around. So having Dark Souls trilogy be solidified, and having another From Software game on the way, I hope they do revisit the Dark Souls world sometime in the future. They're allowed to deviate and do whatever they want now. They've earned it, and I'm sure they'll make games we enjoy, but I definitely want to see it continue, and I don't want, years to come, I don't want there to be no more Dark Souls for people, because I know maybe you haven't thought about that, Larry, but now that I'm thinking about Castlevania, I'm thinking the same thing could happen to Dark Souls, and I don't want you to experience that sadness. So
yeah, no, I don't want to go through that where I just have to remember it forever. and I never get to have more.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things I wanted to say though is it's a good thing they make remakes and remasters of games that have recently come out and to keep them alive. They kind of boost it. They give it a little bump, like some life in it.
Right. Absolutely, definitely.
And they could do that with any game, Castlevania included. I mean, they just came out with like a Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood PS4, like little HD bump or whatever. But I don't really care. Like, it's
right.
It's great. I got it. I'll play it. It's just it's not as impactful, and it doesn't revitalize anything, and it's not a new entry, and but something like Dark Souls Remastered also is not a new entry, but it revitalizes it, so it checks off a mark that is important, and especially being on the Nintendo console is huge. So
definitely,
obviously it's on the other stuff too, but it already was, so they've had that experience, and I basically think I'm tapped out on saying what I have to say at the moment about Dark Souls.
Yeah, I'm all souls down for right now. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in to listening to, this is our second episode of the FireLink Podcast. Our previous one was on the Super Smash Bros. Series, so go check that out. However, you'll probably see a difference because I definitely upgraded my machinery on this end. I had a worse mic previously, and then, upon hearing our last podcast, I upgraded. So, I wanted to be on the same level as Sam, so we'll be sounding crystal clear from here on out. And we just have so many other games, movies, even anime that we want to, specifically Dragon Ball, that we want to talk about. So definitely keep tuning in. We have so much more to talk about, to discuss what we think, this, that, and the other thing, and we want to hear what you have to say too. So we want to thank you for tuning into our second episode, and everyone just take a moment to praise the sun. I'm gonna leave it on that. Everyone praise the sun.
I concur. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you continue to do so. I'm very glad that there is the upgrade that Larry made. There's equality now between us podcasters, so everything should, for your benefit, of course. We want you to hear us in the best way possible, and we thought that was a good idea. So we'll continue to do things like that in whatever way we can make things better. We're going to try to do that. We put a lot of effort into thinking about what topics we're going to come up with for you guys, and also how we want you to hear it. So we're going to continue. So thank you very much again, and stay tuned.